Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Keep 7 Gaming YouTube channel, and today we are going to be going over my top 5 cards from each of the colors, including multicolored artifacts and lands from the upcoming Core Set 2021 that we'll be releasing on Arena on the 25th of June. It is the 16th today, and all of the cards have been released. All the spoilers are done. Everything is on Wizards' website. I will be leaving a link to in the description to the website you can go to on Wizards' website, where you can see all the cards for yourself and go over all of them. But I'm just going to kind of sift through here, give you kind of my top picks in each of the colors. I'm not saying that these are the best cards in those colors that these cards are going to be seeing play, but you know what I'm most excited about and why. Some of these cards I think you probably will be seeing, and I'll let you know kind of on a day-to-day basis. But anyway, yeah, so if we want to get started in white. So my first pick in white was Pack Leader, mainly because we now have a Dog Lord. So it's a 2-mana, 1 and a white dog creature. Other dogs you control get +1/+1 whenever Pack Leader attacks. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn to dogs you control. It's a 2/2. I just think that text, that flavored... Well, first of all, having a Dog Lord is awesome. Second of all, that text, that second line of text is pretty insane. Whenever Pack Leader attacks, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn to dogs you control, which includes Pack Leader himself. So I think if you're doing Dog Tribal, that's like a pretty insane card. For those of you who are going to be doing Dog Tribal, we'll see how that ends up turning out. But yeah, I think that's a pretty exciting card. I mean, dogs finally having a Lord is pretty cool, and one that is that powerful. Each dog is automatically +1/+1 and can't die if they're all attacking. It's pretty awesome. Next is Swift Response. I think Swift Response is like a very solid limited card. This is going to be great removal. 2-mana, destroy target tapped creature. I think this is probably one of the best removal. Some of the best removal that you're going to find in limited. So I would say if you see this card in limited, if you're drafting, this is like pretty much an auto pick. I would absolutely pick this card. This is really, really good removal. Next is Revitalize, which is a common 2-mana, 1 and a white to cast. You gain 3 life, draw a card. I love card draw. I love, 3 life gain is great, but card draw is great. Cheap. It's cheap card draw. It basically does everything Uro does, except, being a 6/6 body for later in the game and ramping. But I don't know. I think I've played this card in a few Pauper decks, if that ever comes back to Arena, and this card is like pretty great there. Especially if you're trying to play like Control Pauper, this is like a pretty solid card. I just really like it. You're probably not going to see it every day. You're probably not going to see it all that much, but I think if you are playing Pauper, this is pretty good. And in limited, this could be decent. A quick way to just gain some life and dig deeper into your deck if you're looking for something. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. 2-mana card draw with some life gain. I mean, it's opt is 1-mana card draw and doesn't do really anything else other than letting you scry. So I think the value is okay. And gaining life is a little bit weak. I mean, gaining life doesn't matter that much, but I think 3 life is decent. And if you're playing a life gain strategy, that's 2 mana for gain 3 life and draw a card. Not so bad. Especially because white, if you're playing life gain and all white, card draw is something you're hard to come by. The next card is 9 Lives, which, if I can find it, right here. So this card is kind of weird. It's a 3-mana, 1 and 2 white enchantment with hexproof. If a source if a source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. When there are 9 or more incarnation counters on 9 lives, exile it. When 9 lives leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. So obviously not something you're going to be wanting to cast right away, but if you are on the precipice of death, you could cast this and save yourself up to 9 turns. It has hexproof, so it's very difficult to interact with, but it's very risky the second this leaves the battlefield for any reason. I mean, if you're stupid enough to blink this with Yorion or something along those lines, you just automatically lose the game because you made a mistake. I don't even know if you could really target this with Yorion because can you target your own hexproof things? I have never tried. I mean, I guess, right? Because you can target your own hexproof things with, like, enchantments, right? To enchant your own hexproof creature, like a Paradise Druid. I've seen that happen. But anyway, for anybody who's not dumb enough to blink their own 9 lives, I think in control this could see some play in, like, blue-white control and stuff. Something where they've been, run down to very low life. They can cast this out. They get 9 extra turns to kind of turn the tide of the game, and you could see something like that. There are cards out there that remove counters from things. I think there's a 1 black mana sorcery or instant that removes up to 5 counters from something you control and stuff like that. So there are cheap ways to remove counters from this to buy you even more time. So I could see this seeing some play. I'm excited about it because I just think it's ridiculous. And look at that art. It's so cute. I'll probably take all the cards that I talk about, get prints for them, and put them up so you can read along and look at them in more detail as I scroll through. But yeah, I mean, look at the art. It's beautiful. It's so cute. And then I think all of that stuff that I just read, I mean, it just gives you 9 turns to try to turn the tide. And I think in something like a control deck, all it would take is a Shatter the Sky sometimes or something like that for you to turn the entire tide of the game and win within 9 turns. So, and there are ways that you can even delay it past 9. So I'm excited about it. And then the last card is Containment Priest. So it's a 2 mana, 1 and a white human cleric with flash. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. It's a 2/2. I think this card is going to see a lot of play, but I think people are going to figure out a way to play around it pretty quickly. Because this doesn't really affect Uro. This doesn't affect exiling, this doesn't affect escaping, because with escaping they are still being cast. So this doesn't really affect Uro, And the things that this would affect, I think people could start playing around. So I think this card will see some play, but I think people will figure it out pretty quickly. Moving on to blue. So the first card in blue that I am excited for is Baron Tolarian Archmage. It's a 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue legendary creature, human wizard. When he enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand at the beginning of your end step. If a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield, this turn, draw a card. He's a 2/2. And he's rare. So if this sounds similar to Fairy, I think that's, it's because it basically is. When it gets played onto the battlefield, I mean, when you play a 3 mana Teferi, you can bounce something to its owner's hand for his -3, and you get the card draw. With this, it has to be something you return to your own hand. If you can bounce something, it's a 3 mana bounce spell if you want to get rid of something your opponent has on the battlefield, or it's a 3 mana bounce spell where you bounce something back to your own hand and you draw a card. So I think it's very similar to Teferi. I think that this card is pretty strong. I think this card is pretty good. I'm excited for this one. Am I going to go out and craft 4 of these right away? Probably not. But who knows? The next card is Ghostly Pilferer. Where are you, Ghostly Pilferer? Roman Ghostlight. Ghostly Pilferer. There you are. It's a 2 mana spirit rogue creature. It's a 2/1. Whenever Ghostly Pilferer becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. Discard a card. Ghostly Pilferer can't be blocked this turn. This is another card that I think people are going to think is bad, but it's actually pretty good. I mean, there are 2 lines of text that have card draw effects, and then that last line, discard a card. Ghostly Pilferer can't be blocked this turn, isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, being able to get 2 damage in just by discarding a card, especially when there are 2 lines of text where he can draw cards, discarding is not something that would probably be super difficult, especially if it's later in the game and you're just discarding lands. But when it becomes untapped, you may pay 2 mana if you do draw a card. So if you attack with this, if you discard a card, can't be blocked, you attack, you pay 2 mana, you draw a card. And whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. So that's pretty conditional, but like you could be drawing a lot of based on a based on certain matchups, you could be drawing a lot of cards with this card. So I don't think that this card is as bad as everybody's saying. A 2-mana 2/1 isn't terrible. And I think with all of the abilities that he has, that makes it even better. So I don't think that this is the worst 2-mana. Look just to his right with Jeskai Elder, 2-mana 1/2 with prowess. I mean, I don't think, I'd rather have Ghostly Pilferer in certain decks than Jeskai Elder, but neither here nor there. I guess it's to each their own, or kind of apples and oranges comparison there. But anyway, Teferi, Master of Time is my next. That's my third pick for blue. It's a 4-mana 2/2 blue. The first time I read this card, I wasn't too enthused, but the more I thought about it, the more powerful this card seems. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time on any player's turn. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time, on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant. And that's the line of text that really it took me a while to figure out. But, like, if you play Teferi, you can not cast or not use one of his abilities until your opponent's turn, and then use one of those abilities, and then it goes back to your turn, and then you can use one of his abilities again, which I think is just insanely powerful. So you can just cast him, play his +1 on your opponent's turn, he's up to 4, bounces back to your turn, you can play the -3. Or you can just play the +1 again and just keep playing the +1. I don't know if it's like every turn, so I don't know if you could play it like on both turns, but I think if you wait until your opponent's turn, you can cast it on their turn and then immediately on your turn, giving you 2 back-to-back casts, which would be pretty nuts. So the more I thought about that one, the better it looked. The next card is Miscast. It's a 1-mana counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 3. I think that just a 1-mana counter spell is, I think as far as a sideboard option, I mean, this to me reads a lot like Mystical Dispute, except it's a little bit more restrictive than Mystical Dispute in that it's just targeting an instant or sorcery. And I'm excited about it because I think it's a great sideboard option, having the confirm just 1-mana, 1-mana blue counter target instant or sorcery spell, as opposed to Mystical Dispute, which could be a 3-mana counter if it doesn't target a blue spell. I think, in limited, maybe I'm less excited about this than I'm really thinking now that I'm thinking about it, because Mystical Dispute is just straight up better than this. But I do like it. I do like having a 1-mana counter spell. This could find sideboard love in certain decks, but overall, Mystical Dispute is probably better. And the more I play Mystical Dispute, the less I like it, because later in the game, it just becomes less and less important, less and less powerful. So yeah, I don't know. I like the card. It was really honestly between that or one of the whales, and I just couldn't really decide. And I really like all the whales that we're seeing. Waker of Waves, Pursued Whale, Spined Megalodon, which I guess is a shark, but I didn't want to be too much of a Timmy. Anyway, 5, Sublime Epiphany. Or actually, you know what, really? I think for my 4 spot, Shipwreck Dowser actually should probably take my 4 spot. Rather than Miscast, now that I'm really thought through. Miscast is not that good. Shipwreck Dowser is actually I think is a very good card. It's a 5-mana, 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So just like a better Scholar of Ages or whatever that card is. It's just a cheaper Scholar of Ages. It's a 3/3 body and it has prowess. Merfolk Wizard. I liked that card. I think that this card is pretty good. And then 5 is Sublime Epiphany, which is just an insane card. Choose one or more. It's 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue. Counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of a target you control, target player draws a card. So again, I think this is absolutely a fantastic sideboard card. If you come up against an opponent where you think you would be able to do all this, you throw it into your main deck during sideboarding. and you could potentially have kind of like a Casualties of War for blue, which I think is awesome. Yeah, this to me reads pretty much like Casualties of War, but for blue. I really like it. Does it see play? It's a little expensive. Does it? But I mean, if it's a little expensive, but like look at all the things you could potentially do with it, and counter target activated or triggered ability. Those especially right now we have so many abilities being triggered and stuff like that that could be hugely important. Especially think Yorion. This is basically Tail's End, so you can like cut off the Yorion ability and just leave all their stuff exiled. And that could just be a scoop. So it's like you come up against Yorion, you could always just have Tail's End, but like this is just if you sideboard in some Tail's End and this is just like a mega insurance policy, and it would provide so much value if you can save the mana for this on the Yorion trigger and then just play like draw a card, counter, target activated or triggered ability, return. There are other stuff you can do, and there's probably a matchup where a lot of this is probably better. You could use all this, but you just gotta find the matchup where all of this could work out, and I think that this is like a very good sideboard card. Moving on to black. So the first black card that I'm really excited about is Massacre Wurm. Just reads a lot like Massacre Girl to me, but anyway, it's a 6 mana, 3 and 3 black worm creatures to 6/5. When it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. When a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. I just love it. I think that's a great board clearance. It's like Cry of the Carnarium without exiling, but it's like Cry of the Carnarium meets Massacre Girl in a 6/5 body. I love it. I love that card. I'm really excited to get this card. I think this is an absolute bomb in limited. Super powerful. The next card I'm really excited about is Village Rites. It's a 1 mana. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. So you can, you could play like Burglar Rat or something you're fine with letting die, and you get some card draw. And drawing 2 cards is I love it. A 1 mana draw 2, where you just have to sacrifice a creature. I mean, if you play right, you can just sacrifice like a token or something you really don't care about, and you get to draw 2. I love it. Or if you're planning on clearing the board anyway, 1 mana to kill your own creature, draw 2, clear the board. I think it's awesome. I mean, you could literally, if you're playing in limited, you could clear with 4 mana on the board, what you would use to cast like Ritual of Soot or Cry of the Carnarium, or maybe Cry is just 3. I can't remember. But anyway, if you have 4 mana open, you sacrifice, maybe the only body you have out there, you draw 2 cards, and then you use, Pestilent Haze to clear the board, potentially with, -2/-2 until end of turn. So I love it. I like it a lot. I would say that Pestilent Haze makes it into my top 5 for black, but to me it's just a weaker Cry of the Carnarium or a weaker Ritual of Soot. So it did not make it. Grim Tutor is something else I'm pretty excited about. It's a card that I think anybody who played Magic a while ago knows about, from what I've heard. I haven't been playing Magic too long, so it's not a card I'm very familiar with, but I'm interested to see how tutoring works. I know we have had Idyllic Tutor, which hasn't really been a huge factor. It's kind of been a non-factor, that it's white sorcery where you can fetch an enchantment, but this is a black sorcery. You pay 1 and 2 black to search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, shuffle your library, you lose 3 life. So it finds any card, not just an enchantment card. So I'm excited to see maybe how this could see play. I'm not personally a fan of tutoring. I don't particularly think it's that great, but hey, maybe I'm super wrong, and people were hyped about this card. So people are hyped about this card. So maybe I'm just kind of not familiar with tutoring and how powerful it can be yet, because I haven't seen too much of it yet. All I've seen is Idyllic Tutor, which is more or less not a card because nobody plays it. The next card is Malefic Scythe. This is one, it's a 2 mana, 1 and a black. It's an artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, with a soul counter on it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each soul counter on it. Whenever the equipped creature dies, put a soul counter on the scythe itself. I just think it's interesting. I really am going to be interested in like brewing up a deck where you want the creature that this is attached to die, and you want to keep doing it over and over again to make it super powerful and stuff like that. I'm just really excited to see how I can make something work with this. I think this is a really cool card. And then the last card is Peer into the Abyss, which is just a horrifying card, or at least the art is. And it's just because of the lunacy of this card. It's a 7 mana, 4 and 3 black sorcery. Target player draws cards equal to half of the number of cards in their library and loses half their life, round up each time. Again, horrifying card art, but it's, I don't know. I'm just interested to see where this sees play, and maybe some janky deck, or maybe somebody combines this with Underworld Dreams and targets the opponent, and the opponent draws half their library and takes damage for each of the cards left. You play that early enough, and who knows, maybe you could win the game like that, right? What if they're at, so let's say 7 off the top, and you would have to wait at least for 7 turns. So probably not. You're probably not getting a kill off this in conjunction with Underworld Dreams, but if you play it twice. But yeah, it's doubtful that that'll happen. Anyway, interested to see what janky decks do with this, because it seems like it could be super. I mean, drawing half your library. Has that ever happened before? Probably, but I haven't seen it, so interested to see where that goes. I guess you could say a runner-up or an honorable mention, Witch's Cauldron, pretty cool. I don't know where this sees play. It's just not as good as Witch's Oven, obviously, but I could see this being, you gain 1 life, draw a card. For black, which is notoriously a difficult to find draw engines, that's a pretty good one. A 1 mana artifact where you pay a little mana, but you gain 1 life, draw a card late game. There are a lot of, in my mono black control deck, paying 1 life and drawing a card is much better than paying, well, I guess it's very similar to Castle Lochthwain. Maybe this is just and if you have no cards in hand, I mean, I guess you save 1 life if you already have 1 in hand or something like that, but I don't know. It's an honorable mention. Veto, Thorn of Dusk Rose, potentially maybe 2, but Duress got a reprint, which I'm stoked about. I love Duress. Thank God. Oh, damn. Yeah, no, Eliminate. Eliminate is another great limited card. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 3 or less. This is going to be 100%. This should be in my top 5, but I've just kind of sifted through real quick. Fantastic limited card. Fantastic card in general. This is going to see a lot of play. I like that card a lot. Eliminate. I thought it was going to be called Vanish, but yeah, Eliminate. 100%. You should keep an eye out for that card. What is that? Is that uncommon? Uncommon. Wow, 2 mana at uncommon. That's insane. I love it. All right, next, red. Most of what I have in red is probably not gonna see play at all. But Fiery Emancipation, love this card. Would love to see how I'm able to brew up some sort of deck that allows this sort of thing to happen. Fiery Emancipation in conjunction with Obosh. Can you imagine that? Even though Obosh is a dead card, but if you main board Obosh and then you play Fiery Emancipation, dope. Soulseer. Soulseer is, it's a 3 mana instant. Soulseer deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. That permanent loses indestructible till end of turn. A 3 mana deal 5 damage is pretty strong. This gets rid of most things, so getting rid of most things in red for 5 mana is pretty dope. Next is Double Vision. Just interested to see how people, I think a lot of, in same deal with Fiery Emancipation, I don't think that these cards are going to see a lot of play. I don't. Maybe they do, but I don't think that will happen. And if they do, I think it's in weird, janky, turn 8 or 9 or 10 where they've built up enough mana, you just burn you out for a shit ton of damage. That's where I see these cards potentially getting play. Maybe in a Song of Creation deck or something. I don't know. Who knows? But very cool cards that, again, I don't think are going to be top tier meta, but I think will be very interesting to see what people do and how they use these to make a very cool, maybe mono red burn deck or something, or even multicolored burn deck or something like that. Another card I'm excited about in red is Thrill of Possibility, getting a reprint. I guess you could really say Thrill of Possibility, Shock, and Scorching Dragonfire all getting reprints. All great cards. All have been staples in Standard for a long time. So the fact that they're going to be sticking around is pretty awesome. And then the last card is Subira, Tulzidi Caravaner. I just like this card. It's a 3-mana, 2/3 with haste. For 1 mana, another target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. And then for 2 mana, you can tap it, discard your hand until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control deals power 2 or less deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Situational. Don't know where this sees play, but a 2/3 with haste for 3 mana that allows another card to be unblockable could potentially see some play in, like, I guess if you're still a Cavalcade of Calamity player, could see some play there. Spellgorge are weird getting another reprint. That's odd. Unleash Fury is maybe an honorable mention. I think Raking Claws is just a better card overall. But Unleash Fury, if there are situations where doubling the power of a creature is more important than giving it double strike, I think that's why I'm comparing this to Raking Claws. Raking Claws gives target creature double strike, and I think it might be only, or maybe it's 2 mana, or it might be 1, and it also has cycling. This doesn't have cycling, and all it does is double the power of a target creature. There are situations where that is more important than giving something double strike, but I think it's a solid limited card. Yeah, solid limited card. And that's about it. Volcanic Salvo, another card I'm excited for, but didn't make my top 5 because I don't know. I don't know when that sees play or how that sees play. All right, going into Le Green, Le Rond, Le Verde. I don't know how to say green in French. Anyway. Oh, Heroic Intervention. I think Heroic Intervention and also, Heroic Intervention, 2 mana, 1 and a green, instant. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So kind of like Lazotep, Lazotep Plating. But that, as well as it's a 1 mana Ranger's Guile. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains hexproof until end of turn. I really like both of those cards. Solid limited cards, great ways to protect your creatures for not a lot of mana. Give them hexproof. And then, yeah, great limited cards. They're great cards in general. Great cards for Standard. Great way to protect your creatures. Perhaps Ranger's Guile is better because it's that much cheaper, but I think both of them are... well, Ranger's Guile is good, I guess, for targeted protection, and then Heroic Intervention is just better because it protects all permanents. So, if they're trying to target something in particular, bing, bang, boom, protected. Could be good in, like, Team Iraq, I guess, to protect your Wilderness Reclamation. Anyhoozles. Next is Garruk Unleashed. This is only on my list because I love Garruk. He's my favorite Planeswalker, and we finally seeing him uncursed. I think I already did a video where we went over all his abilities and stuff. He's a lot like the Garruk that we've seen recently. I think he's just a little less powerful. But he has a way to protect himself with his -2. His +1 will beef up a creature pretty tremendously. +3/+3 and trample until end of turn is nothing to sniff your nose at. Then his -7 is obviously something that could win you the game, but as we've seen with most Planeswalkers, you rarely ever get to ultimate your Planeswalkers. And if you do, your opponent usually concedes before you can even really do it. So it's kind of a non-factor, but it is very powerful. The next card in green that I want to talk about is Truffle Snout. I only have this on my list because I love that card art. And we can move on. And then next is Warden of the Woods. I think that a 5/7 for 6 mana isn't the worst thing in the world, especially when it has an ability where when it's the target of a spell or ability your opponent controls, you may draw 2 cards. I think that I mean, Vigilance is great, but I think that is probably what makes this card as good as it is. Does it see play? Probably not, but I think this is a great limited card. I think this is a great if you're drafting. If it becomes the target of some, and it's uncommon, so you might see a fair amount of these. It's a 5/7, so it blocks most things. It has Vigilance. 5 damage is nothing to sniff at. And then if it becomes the target of a spell or ability, which it will, you draw 2 cards. So card draw in green, always something that's great to see. Thrashing Brontodon gets a reprint. Classic. And then the last card, I think one of the ones that I'm most excited for is Scavenging Ooze. It's a 2 mana, 1 and a green ooze creature. It's a 2/2, and for 1 green mana, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Scavenging Ooze, and you gain 1 life. Shuts down Uro, shuts down just a hell of a lot of stuff that has escape. Shuts down everything with escape. I mean, nobody wants to cast an Uro if this is on the field, right? And all of those ramping decks that ramp up to Uro, or continue to ramp and ramp and ramp, and then play Uro and Uro and Uro and Uro for 1 green mana, just out of the graveyard and into exile. I mean, that's awesome. I think this is a fantastic card, and it beefs itself up. It's vulnerable to shock and stuff like that. But if you're up against the shock, if you're up against a deck that plays shock, they're probably not doing the Uro cycling and stuff, or not cycling, but you understand what I mean. Like the Uro play it and then a graveyard, and from graveyard to battlefield, and then blah 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 blah, bouncing back and forth and back and forth. It's exhausting. So a great way to shut those kinds of decks down. I think it's a great main board option, and it's a great sideboard option. If you have it in the sideboard, you know that when you're coming up against decks that have escape costs and stuff like that, you can just get rid of stuff. And then I think in general, just like if you're able, if you're milling your opponent, or the game's going on for a super long period of time, you're just exiling stuff out of their graveyard. It's a solid card. This also shuts down things like cycling. You're only doing it one at a time. Well, you're not doing it one at a time, because I think you can trigger this ability multiple times, right? As much green mana as you have, you can just trigger it. So, they keep cycling things in for 1 mana, all it takes. And that's even if it is just one time. If you can only cast that one time per trigger, you can. If you have multiple of these out there, you can get up to 4 out, or however much mana you have. You can just keep exiling cards from their graveyard. So I like this card because I hate cycling. I like this card because as much as I love Uro, it's great to see that there is some balancing going on, because those decks are super powerful right now, and Uro's just super powerful in general. So seeing things come out that they're trying to balance is nice. Next, moving into multicolored. So and this kind of encapsulates all colors, but all of the sanctums have been released. They're essentially just shrines, very similar to the Kamigawa shrines, I believe, and they all have different. Each one of the shrines and each of the different colors have different abilities. I can make a video about them if you would like, but more or less, each one of the colors has a specific shrine that does certain things. I think, black gains X life and deals X damage to an opponent when it's put onto the battlefield for each shrine you control, and green at the beginning of your upkeep adds X mana of any color based on the number of shrines you control, things like that. So I think all of the shrines are really cool. They, none of them really took any of the top 5 spots, because I don't think that shrines are going to be, I think that if you want to make a janky shrines deck, that's great, go do that, but I don't think that they're going to be top tier meta. I think the green one potentially could. I think adding mana at the beginning of your upkeep, and I think it's only like a 3 mana sanctum or shrine, isn't the worst thing in the world. Just it's great ramp. But all of them together kind of, they don't make any of the particular color top 5s, but I think all of them you could put them in here and just say that the sanctums in general, I think, are cool cards. I'm excited to play. I'm excited to make decks with them. But Sanctum of All gets one of my multicolored top 5s. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library or graveyard for a shrine card and put it on the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If an ability of another shrine you control triggers while you control 6 or more shrines, that ability triggers an additional time. So it's a great way to kind of end the game if you're playing like a shrine-heavy deck. Watcher of Spheres. I think this is a great card for Azorius Flyers. Flying creatures, creature spells with flying you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever another creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, Watcher of Spheres gets +1/+1 until end of turn. To 2/2. Just another great Azorius Flyers card. Bird Wizard. Yeah, it discounts other spells, and it gets a slight buff for a turn when other creature cards come in, when other flying creatures come in, which, in Azorius Flyers is going to happen. Next, we have Obsessive Stitcher. I think this is a great reanimation deck inclusion. It's a human wizard for 3 mana, 1, a blue, and a black. You can tap it, draw a card, then discard a card, and then for 4 mana, 2, a blue, and a black, you can tap it, sacrifice it, and return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, and it's a 0/3. Great reanimation card. You can, if you have things like Bond of, what is it? if you have things that reanimate, this is, and you aren't finding them in the deck, things that bring stuff from the battlefield, from the graveyard to the battlefield, stuff like that. If you're just not finding the things that you need to reanimate stuff and you're kind of running out of time, you can just sacrifice this and just get something back that was milled from your library into your graveyard. I think it's a good card. I think it's great for reanimation decks. Overall, it's probably not going to see a lot of play, but for those of you who play reanimation decks, I think this is a great card for you. And then that's really kind of it for multicolored. None of the other cards I'm super particularly fond of. I mean, Alpine Houndmaster is pretty good because it's a 2-mana draw 2 essentially, or 2-mana, 2-mana draw 2 more or less, that thins out your deck and has a little bit of a buff ability. But I'm not too, I don't think I'm going to be playing dogs or hounds or tribal decks. But anyway, moving on to colorless. The only colorless card we have is 8-mana Ugin the Spear Dragon. You're going to be seeing this a lot. This is an extremely powerful card. +2 Ugin the Spirit Dragon deals 3 damage to any target. -X, exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less. That's 1 or more colors. And then -10, you gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. 7 mana, or it starts with 7 loyalty. This is an incredible card. You're going to see that a lot. There are going to be a lot of people that just ramp up to this card. It's awesome. As far as artifacts, I think Tormund's Crypt is probably my #1 choice. It shuts down things like cycling, shuts down things like Uro, things that are really popular right now, things that play stuff out of graveyards for escape cost. It's a 0-mana artifact. You can play it and sacrifice it, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So for 0 mana, that's fucking insane. I love it. That's my #1 pick right now. 2 is Maze Mind Tome, 2-mana artifact. You put it on the battlefield, tap it, put a page counter on it. You can scry 1. You can pay 2 mana, tap it, put a page counter on it, and draw a card. When there are 4 or more page counters on it, exile it. If you do, gain 4 life. The more I thought about it, the more I like this. For 2 mana, and all you need to do is tap it, and you get a free scry, and you can do that up to 4 times. Or you pay 2 mana, tap it, and then you can draw a card. I think it's great. I think it's a great card. The more I've thought about it, the more I really like it. If you're in a deck that needs scry and card draw, I think this is a great way to do it. And then the 4 life at the end, who knows, that 4 life could really come in handy. So you could just trigger this on purpose to get the life gain if you need it. So the more I think about it, the more I really like it. Next is Spark Hunter Masticore. It's a 3-mana, 3/4. As an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card. Protection from Planeswalkers for 1 mana. Deals 1 damage to target Planeswalker. And then for 3 mana, gains indestructible until end of turn. So good limited card. Good way to shut down Planeswalkers if you want to sideboard it. But I think there are probably better ways to deal with them. I'm just excited that there's a card that has protection from Teferi, to be honest. And then lastly is Chromatic Orrery. It's a 7-mana card. I just don't think this card is that good. It's just too expensive to really... All of the payoffs, it's just too expensive for. But, I don't know. In a janky, weird deck where you're playing all colors, I think it could be cool. And then last but not least, land. I think I've already discussed my opinion on what they have done with the lands a little bit at length in one of my previous videos. But I'm really upset that they reprinted Temples, especially this soon. And especially they're reprinting tapped lands. Radiant Fountain, I think, is just a garbage card. Animal Sanctuary is new. I didn't see, or it might not be new, but I haven't seen it yet. For 2 mana, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on a cat or a dog. So I guess if you're playing cat, dog, tribal, that's pretty good. You can also do it to a goat, ox, or snake or bird. But I'm just thinking cat, dog is pretty. Those cards are going to be pretty. Prevalent now that there's a bunch of cats and dogs in this set. Really upset about the temples. And then they have Scoured Barrens and Rugged Highlands are coming back. Jungle Hollow. So a lot of the Dismal Backwater gets a reprint. Didn't that just come out? Or not just come out, but didn't it just get reprinted in what was the most recent one? Ikoria? Fabled Passage gets a reprint, which this is the only one I'm putting on my lands list. Because I love Fabled Passage. Fabled Passage is a great card. I think it's a little bit too soon to be reprinting it, as it came out, or maybe it didn't come out, but it was printed or reprinted in Theros, or no, not Theros, Eldraine. So I think it's a little too early to be reprinting this. I mean, did we really need it? There are people saying that it has been reprinted for paper purposes, like decreasing the value of it in paper or something like that. I don't know, but I'm just kind of upset because all the packs I'm going to be pulling, I'm just going to be pulling, you know, if I pull a bunch of rares, if I pull a bunch of Scryland rares or a bunch of Fabled Passage rares of cards I already have, I'm going to be pretty upset, but it is what it is. But yeah, so that more or less is my opinion on the new cards. So yeah, those are my top 5 in all the colors and in multicolored artifacts and lands. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you in the next one.